Microphone works. Okay, we're doing an audio test, making sure that it works. All right, welcome everybody. So now it's a time to begin, but I'm a little out of breath from running around. So how is everyone today? Thank you all for coming. Yes? Oh, I thought you had your hand up. So thank you, Daniel. Daniel's walking around right now with little forms for you to fill out because he's shooting part of a documentary. And just in case you're on camera, he just wants you to give permission that it's okay. So thank you all for coming today for Won't You Still Be My Neighbor? I just love the title of that. I'm a product of television, and anytime I can get a title together for a presentation that I do here, that either is a song title or a TV title or a movie title, I'm all about that. So my name is Lynne Drinkwater, and I am the Moore County Senior Enrichment Center's program coordinator here. I've worked here now for 12 years. When I first started, I had two positions. I was also the Medicare specialist, what they call a SHIP coordinator, Seniors Health Insurance Information Program Coordinator. And I had to learn about Medicare. And now once you learn Medicare, you don't unlearn Medicare. It's just in that brain forever. But over the years, Medicare became an entity of its own. So we were able to create two different positions. So now I am full-time doing programming, and we have Katie Hall who does Medicare. During open enrollment season, though, I do put my Medicare cap back on and help with that. But I first want to say thank you to my coworkers over here, Alvita and Jennifer Thomas. Alvita Person is our family caregiver advisor, and Jennifer Thomas is our in-home supervisor. And I just want to thank you all for coming today. So before you learn a little bit about me, I have to go back in time and teach you a little bit about my mom, Doris Harvey. She is the strongest woman I have ever known in my life. Always able to pivot and find a new path. And that is the theme of this talk today, is pivot and find a new path. And so, as you can see in the left, she was born in 1926, in the 20s there, and it was during the Depression, and she lived through some really hard times. And they don't call it the greatest generation for nothing. I do believe that is and will always be the greatest generation. They just did what they needed to. They all pivot, and they all found a new path. Also, what you can see over there is she's holding her dog, Puddles. Now, I'm just going to fast forward just because the picture's on the screen, but she wound up living the last 3 years of her life with dementia, and I was gifted a beautiful little animated dog that they sell on, I believe, a website for Alzheimer's. They have cats, they have dogs, they have all different colors. And when I sent that to her, she thought it was real. And it is animated, and the more it is with a person, the more animated it gets. And the batteries last for such a long time because what it does is it learns the pattern. So when my mom would take a nap, it would be quiet. And I think it like goes in idle. But when she was awake, it knew it, and it would turn its head. It would ruff, ruff, ruff. It would make all these little sounds, and it was fabulous. But it was only until I was putting pictures together for her celebration of life video that I saw the reason why she took to it. You can see the similarity of the dog that she had when she was young. I remembered that she had a dog, but I didn't remember what it looked like. So it clicked why she just was fascinated with that dog. But so just to go back a little bit on the story of my mom. So she went through some rough times, like I said. When my dad came back from the war, they got married, hit rough times. They always pivot and found a new path. And so my oldest sister came along, then my middle sister came along, and then I came along. And when I was about 2 or 3, finances got a little tight. So back in the early 60s, when it wasn't such a custom thing for women to go out and get a job, my mom pivot and found a new path and said, I'm going to be a realtor. That just popped in her head. Went to a real estate office, asked how she becomes a real estate or a realtor. And they gave her a book, they gave her a test, she passed, she became a realtor. Now, she worked for that one agency for a while and then went over and worked for another agency. And soon she found her sweet spot at this one place where she worked for Century 21. And over the years, because my mom is a people person, she loves people, always loved people and animals. One of the nicest people you would have ever met. And she listened. So when people told her, I'm looking for this, she would show them this. She wouldn't show them that so that she would make money. She would show them what they wanted. She would never show a house that she didn't want herself. And she had repeat business. Every 5-10 years, somebody wanted a new house, they'd go back to my mom. They would send their family members and their friends. My mom became the #1 realtor from Century 21 in the tri-state area for 3 years in a row. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with the term tri-state, that means all of New York, all of New Jersey, and all of Connecticut. That is a true feat. And so years went on, and now I've graduated high school, I'm starting college, and my mom and dad hit a rough patch, and they decided to separate. My mom still wants to work at the job that she has, but a coworker says, you know, my friend has a house out in the Hamptons. Maybe he'd let you rent it. And this was way before the Hamptons of now. Hamptons was a sweet little area, nice, quaint little towns. People went on vacation, but not the way it is now, where it's crazy all the time. So we went and we rented that house for about 8 months. We commuted about an hour and a half, 2 hours each way just to go find peace at this house, which we did. We loved it out there. So we decided, my mom and dad went back together for a little bit, wound up deciding they're going to get divorced. So now where does my mom want to go? She wants to go back out to the Hamptons because she just loved it out there. We felt peace. So she doesn't have a job. I don't have a job. So we go out there one day and she pulls into a parking space. And lo and behold, right in the window in front of the parking space, it says, realtor needed. So my mom says, I'll be right back. So she goes upstairs and comes downstairs. She goes, well, I have a job. And the owner said to her, so where are you going to live? I don't know. He said, Carol Lee, another coworker there, realtor. Carol Lee, don't you have a house that you want to rent? Why don't you show it to Doris and her daughter? So my mom said, well, not only did I get a job, but we're going to follow this lady, and this is where we're going to go live. And it was a beautiful house up a hill in the beautiful town of Watermill, surrounded by forest. We had deer and pheasant and quail. It was just total peace. And so once again, like I said, my mom was able to pivot and find a new path. So I found little jobs when I was working out there. And about 6 months in, my mom realized real estate really wasn't the thing out there, because back in those days in the early 80s, they lived out there. So they lived and they either worked, or they lived and worked in Manhattan and came out on the weekends. And when those people passed away, they didn't sell the house, they gifted it to their family. So my mom soon realized real estate wasn't going to be her way to make money out here. So one day she prayed and woke up with this saying, called the local newspaper and said, I want to put out an ad for cleaning to great expectations. And the phone started ringing. And so she started cleaning houses, because the people who lived in Manhattan didn't want to clean when they got out there after fighting traffic on a weekend, and didn't want to clean before they went back in fighting traffic on a Sunday night. So my mom would clean the house in between their visits, get it ready so that when they showed up on a Friday, it was beautiful, and they would leave on Sunday, and the next Friday, it was beautiful. So she did this for a while and made a huge killing, because she was able to pivot and find a new path. And she always did it with a great attitude. I always said, there's a saying that Mary Engelbreit, an artist, said, bloom where you're planted. That was my mom. You could put her in the middle of nowhere with just dirt, and she would find a way to make herself bloom wherever she was. And so that carried on through me, because I got to witness that and see that. So I'm lucky in a way that part of me feels like I can pivot and find a new path. But I hope to be somewhat of the woman that she was. I mean, it's an amazing, strong woman. But anyway, now through her life out in the Hamptons working and cleaning, she wound up becoming a manager from that, a manager of a CEO of Revlon, rented a big home out there for a year. And the owner of that first real estate office hooked her up with him and said, this woman would be wonderful to manage your estate. And then he lived there for a year, realized, I want to buy a house out here. So she wound up working for him for a few years. And my sister Karen came to me one day when I was 23 and said, Lynn, what are you going to do? Actually, she would call me Linny. Linny, what are you planning on doing for the rest of your life? Do you want to live out here? What do you want to do? And I said, I don't even know. And she said, if you had 6 months to live, what would you do? And I said, well, I'd probably go to LA and try to work in TV. And she said, well, what's stopping you? Because what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work out. You just come home. And when she made it sound so simple, I thought, oh my gosh, yeah, she's right. So I made up a thought in my head, okay, in 8 months, I'm going to go out there. Well, with one of the connections of my mom cleaning houses, I was able to find an apartment to sublet in LA, which was gorgeous. And I lived over this cute little Japanese couple, the Tsumas, that my mom felt comfortable leaving me in LA with a wonderful family. And I didn't have a job, but I was going to persevere. I was going to find a job because I learned how to pivot and find a new path. And so my mom was crying one day, and Mr. Giddis, the CEO of Revlon, said, why are you crying? She said, well, my daughter's moving to LA and she doesn't even have a job. He said, don't worry about it. We own companies out there. We'll get her a job. So he owned Technicolor, so owned the company called Compact Video, which is a post-production company. So what Daniel is doing today, when he finishes, he has all of his tapes that he has recorded over this time, and now he has to edit them together. And that's what post-production is. They go out and they do all these shoots, they bring all the information, they need to edit it all. So I wound up getting a job out there. Now, of course, the president of this company that was told to get me a job did not want to like me, and he would tell this story many times at Christmas parties. In fact, he really wanted to hate me because he did not like being told, you're going to hire this person. But he liked me. Anyway, so I met my husband there, and once we decided we were going to get married, we couldn't both work at the same company. Another company knew that I was engaged, went to work for them, finally settled a few years later at Walt Disney, and worked for a Disney Channel, the broadcast and engineering operations, all of the on-air. And I worked there for 10 years, and I loved it. And I worked my way up to being a senior manager and ran a few departments and was the daily operations person. Loved it. My husband worked 30 years there. I worked 19-ish. And my husband said, you know what, let's move. I was born here. I don't want to die here. It's getting crazy here. Let's go someplace like Mayberry. So we came out here, and we've lived here now for 19 years, and we just love it. And so now what was I going to do? I wanted to maybe open a bakery, but it was around the economy wasn't doing too well, so that wouldn't have been a good idea. And I just happened to fall into a job working with home care. And I loved working with people and seniors and learning all about resources and services. I just loved it. And then I worked for a short time with hospice, learned about that. Then I worked for 2 years with St. Joe's, and I helped start up their mobile dental outreach semi-truck, and worked with a lot of the nonprofits in the area and loved that. And then now it's 12 years that I'm here at the senior center, and I just love it. But, you know, here I'm working in television out there, and I come out here. What was I doing? Pivot, and I found a new path. This path is amazing, and I love it. Wouldn't change it. So with that, so now my mom, fast forward a little bit more, my mom lived on her own. After she worked for Mr. Giddis for a while, my sister moved to Hong Kong for 6 years, took my mom. So my mom got to live in Hong Kong because she was helping taking care of 2 grandbabies, and loved it there. She actually got a job out there and loved it. And while she was there for her 70th birthday, this shows you how strong she was, by herself. She always wanted to go to Australia. So she went to Australia for 10 days by herself for her birthday. And she had a ball. And then she came back to the States, and she lived in Vermont for about 18 years. very healthy, always made this wonderful chicken vegetable soup, great. When she turned 90, she started to get a little slow. Excuse me, started to get a little slow. So I thought that Christmas, I'm going to hire some home care for her, just to do little things, just to have her free time be more free for herself. But unfortunately, the beginning of December, she was making, this is really profound if you think about it, but she was making her soup, chopping carrots, and carrot fell on the floor. And instead of pivoting and bending, she just bent and broke her leg. And with that, she wound up in the hospital and 2 days later had a heart attack. So the major setbacks of those two things, she wasn't able to come out and live in an apartment alone. She wasn't even able to go into assisted living. So she unfortunately went straight from living in an apartment on her own, independent, to being in a nursing home. But my mom found a way to pivot and find a new path even with that, and bloom where she was planted. And what she did is she treated that room, that part of that room, she was only half of the room, like her apartment. My sister Karen decorated it beautifully, even bought her a pretty little pink princess phone. It was gorgeous. So my mom treated it as if it was her apartment, and she would refer to it as her apartment. And she was actually president of their activities because she was always positive and they wanted her to interact with everybody. And about 2 years in, she had signs of dementia. She had macular degeneration, which over the year now that we've learned with the Engaged Brains Project, we didn't ever realize vision and dementia goes hand in hand. So someone with dementia, their vision isn't very well. And the stronger their dementia goes, the worse their vision goes. I never knew that. You know, someone's looking right at you, you're thinking they can see you, but that's not necessarily the case. So for the last 3 years, my mom did have dementia, and during COVID, we had to pivot. All of us had to pivot and find a new path. And the wonderful place where my mom was at in Brattleboro, Vermont, they did a Zoom call every week. So we would look forward to that. But I always knew once my mom went into a nursing home, I made the vow, and so did my sisters, we're going to call my mom every day. Because if someone has to live in a place like that, they're going to get a phone call from us every single day. So I lived for those calls. It was great. The video calls were fun. I would snap pictures, and I've actually realized afterwards that I have pictures from every single Zoom call that we had, which was wonderful. And I would have phone calls with her, but more about the phone calls in a minute. Okay, so one of my pet peeves is when someone does a presentation and then they put a big screen on and then they read to you as if you don't know how to read yourself. So I'm just going to let you read as you can, but what is dementia? And so for the longest time, I didn't even want to do this talk because I am not a doctor and I am definitely not a neuropsychologist. But after being with Karen for this year with the Engaged Brains Project and learning all these slides that she would present to us, I just took some of those facts and created this, but I do have experience working with seniors, and I do have experience with my mom having dementia and what we were able to do with pivoting and finding a new path. So here you go. This is dementia often results in isolation. So how many of you in this room today know a family member or a friend or a neighbor with dementia? Okay, most everybody. So what I see happening over the last 12 years in my line of work here is when, say you're a couple and you go out with another couple in your neighborhood and you go out to dinner every once in a while, you might have functions, parties, and then somebody gets a diagnosis, and then people just don't know what to say, they don't know what to do, so they just kind of go like this and go on with their life, and then this couple is left alone. Now, over the years of learning about brain health, I have learned that socialization is the key. There's lots of key elements to brain health, but socialization is one of the biggest keys. As a matter of fact, when Karen Sullivan does any presentation, the one thing she talks about is socialization and go to the senior center. We have tons of things that we can do here that would keep people social. Because when you're social, you're speaking, you're thinking, and you're communicating, using body language, learning that, keeping that skill up. And the person that's not only that has dementia can keep that up, but the person who's taking care of a person that has just been diagnosed with dementia, that person now is isolated. That's not fair. And when you're isolating somebody, dementia only gets worse quicker. It's like going downhill. You don't want to do that. So by applying a community-wide, person-centered approach to dementia education and care, we will reduce the unnecessary distress and disability that has become synonymous with these diagnoses. Intro to Dr. Karen Sullivan. Everybody in this room know Dr. Karen Sullivan? Okay, she's fabulous. So when she came down here, she came to meet me and she said, look, I'm new in this area. I've got to practice. I want to do some presentations. So we together started Memory Monday. Once a month from September through May, she would come, and she did for a whole year, and do a different talk each month on dementia. It's amazing how many different talks there are on dementia, brain health, whatever. And the following year, she had to cut back because now her business was booming, and she had her partners come. So they would all take turns doing the talks from September through May. After that, we unfortunately had to lose them coming and doing talks, but she always made the effort to come and give me a presentation here at least once or twice a year whenever I asked, or if she had a topic that she knew she wanted to get out in the public. So we have a relationship, and I just love it. Anyway, well, a couple of years ago, Karen found a grant and applied for it and received it. She was awarded it, and now she was like, oh my gosh, now what do I do with it? And so she went to the First Health Foundation, and they together worked on it and said, okay, this grant is good for 2 years with the possibility of a third if it's still going in the right direction. And so Karen decided to come up with this program called the Engaged Brains Project. But first she met Teepa Snow. Everybody familiar with Teepa Snow? If you are not, if you can look her up on YouTube, you'll have an unbelievable amount of videos. Now, talk about pivot and find a new path. This woman was an occupational therapist by trade, and she would go into nursing homes, and you need daily care. You need to brush your teeth. You need to take a bath. You need to get dressed. You need to eat. And when you're in a skilled nursing home, a lot of times those CNAs, they have a lot of patients to take care of, and they don't have a lot of time. So what happens is they either rush and then are maybe a little bit rough, or maybe they have to get a little stern, or maybe they have to resort to putting some drugs in a person to get them a little bit more compliant. Well, what Teepa decided to do is to just take a few more minutes and be nice and have that person understand them, and she would still get the task that needed to be done completed, but she would do it with just a little bit more time and a little bit more, dignity, which is basically what everybody deserves. And so they couldn't believe that she had this magic touch. It really wasn't a magic touch. It was just putting yourself in someone else's shoes and giving just a few more minutes. Now, we know in this world, nurses and CNAs, they can't do that for everybody. They're given a huge task every day. So together, these two came up with, hey, let's get 60 people, we're going to call them champions in Moore County, and we're going to go through your training, and then we're going to come back, and within that year, all of us champions, we're going to do impact projects. This is my second one, doing this talk, and hope to get a ripple effect through Moore County, because the 60 people who go out and do talks or whatever they're doing, now that ripples to more people learning about it and knowing about it. And the more we can do, the better. Now, Karen has a huge nut to crack, because one of her big goals is to get all of the healthcare system behind this, to be able to better judge if a person might have dementia, and then how to get them care and help sooner. Because right now, you're with a doctor for just a few minutes, And if you start possibly repeating what you're saying in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, that doctor doesn't notice that. You're good, you're performing, you're in the doctor's office, you're on good behavior, you're answering all the questions. And the doctor, the doctor is looking at you for 2 seconds, but they're click, 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 click. Have you fallen? Have you done this? What do you think about that? Okay, we're going to start you on this drug. Here you go. We'll see you in 6 months, or we'll see you in a year. So what I was saying before about isolation, so now this person goes out and for 6 months or a year, now they might be sliding down quicker. So what we want to try to do is get lots of people in Moore County to know more and more about brain health, what they can do to prevent it on themselves, or help other people, maybe keep it at bay or keep it at where it's at. And if it does progress, what to do, where can they go? So these are the Engaged Brains champions. And so we had a little event where we had a little graduation, and it was a lot of fun. And then that was last September. I can't believe it's been a year ago. And it's been wonderful. Great learning experience. And so with this Engaged Brains project, I'm not going to read the whole type of thing, but basically Karen's goal is person-centered care, no matter what it is, in the hospital, in a doctor's office, at a bank, in the restaurant, at a nursing home, at the senior center, at a person's home, wherever. And so this is wonderful. So we're going to go on to meet a few Engaged Brains champions. Now, I mentioned before, Alvita person who's not in the room right this second, but Jennifer Thomas is. And even though there's 3 of us in this building and we all are champions, we're all champions for different reasons. And we all had different impact projects because of those different reasons. So I did fidget mats last year. Lots of people in this room came and we made these little fidget mats. They're adorable and they're meant to put on laps of people who have a little bit of brain change, and it helps them fidget. If they're fidgety, instead of them having to get up and go move, they could still sit and they could fidget with their fingers and feel different things, use zippers, different textures. And it was wonderful. So all these mats went to Terabella, to the residents of their secured memory care. And then we have Jennifer Thomas. And because, like I said before, she's our in-home aid supervisor, she was able to train her CNA staff here at the senior center and our director. She went to the training too. And then what Alvita did, there's a seat right here in this row and one right here in front. You're welcome. And Alvita, because she's the family caregiver advisor, she decided to do First Fridays 3 months in a row and did a bingo for her caregivers. Because a lot of times caregivers feel like if I bring the person that I love that has a brain change anywhere, people are going to look and I don't know, something might happen or whatever. We want to get rid of that. People are people. I don't care. Someone walking around in a cast, everybody doesn't change and do whatever because the person's walking around in a cast. So, we just have to get away from that. Break down that stigma. So we had that wonderful little caregiver bingo, which was a lot of fun. Now, in the training that we've done throughout the year, the champions would go once a month to a lunch and we would learn different things. This slide was staggering to me. At the age of 55, after 55, it's 42%. That's huge. That is huge. So basically, we need to be more social. So coming here to the senior center, there's lots of ways, but there's other things in the community as well. This isn't a selling point to come here, although it is free. The only thing that you pay for is the fitness. But if you wanted to be social and play cards, knit, we have chess, we have all kinds of things. The free walking track downstairs, pool table, ping pong, shuffleboard, everything you can imagine. Free cooking class. And the thing for your brain, when you can pivot and find a new path, learning something new helps create more connections in the brain. And Karen always said, if you can have more connections, like a savings account, more connections than what you use, when brain cells die, you will always have more available to you. So the more you learn things, come to a piano class, learn how to play piano, learn how to play chess. Just learning how to play chess, your brain is making connections, even if you don't master it or win, because you're thinking, your brain is actually, it hurts sometimes, and you're like, oh my God, how do I do that? But anyway, so keeping social is key. So like I said before, that social isolation and stigma, boredom, all of that, if you're not using the brain, you know the saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. We want to keep it. This one, lack of engagement is the real cause of disease. Look at all these percentages. This is amazing to me. But 40% said they received less invitations. And that's what I was saying before. People just quietly go like this because they don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. But it's the same person that you knew. They just have a little bit of a brain change. So now what you have to do is learn how to pivot and find a new path. Find a new way to have that conversation with somebody. Instead of asking open-ended questions, you can ask in a different style. I had to pivot and learn a new path when I was talking with my mom on the phone, which is another conversation that we're going to have in a couple of seconds here. So how do we remember our family, friends, and neighbors with brain change, disease, or dementia? We stay in relationship with them. So we tell them, you're still of value to me. People who have a couple and the one person who's the caregiver, that's wonderful. At least that person still has someone that is caring for them. But how many people do we know that live alone and they have dementia and you know it and they don't want to know it? And so maybe what you can do for them is say, hey, there's a presentation over at the senior center tomorrow at 10. How about I pick you up at 9:30 and we'll go together? That's something easy, neighborly. So staying in relationships when brain abilities are changing requires us to be flexible. Like I said, we have to accept it and adapt and pivot. Yeah, that's right. Pivot and find a new path. Exactly. Pink princess phone. Remember I told you earlier that my mom even had a pink princess phone. So one time when I was calling her every day, you know, the nursing home was very nice. They would have an ice cream truck come by, they do all this stuff, and by the time the people go out of their rooms and down the hall, down the elevator, through the lobby, and outside, they're having a great time. But then going back in, it's very scary because everything looks the same. Every room is exactly the same, except my mom's pretty apartment, the way it was decorated. So I called her one night, and she was just out of breath and upset, and I was like, what's wrong? They put me in the wrong building. I don't know. There was an activity, and now they moved everything, and I'm in a totally different building. And I had to quietly, I didn't tell her, no, you're not. You're in the same building. I didn't do that. I just cared about her. And I said, let me ask you something. Do you see the pink princess phone? Yes. Do you see Karen's beautiful painting of the pink roses on the wall? Yes. I said, well then, Mom, you're in your same room, but I totally can understand when you come off that elevator and you walk down that hall to get to your room and you look in the doors, every room looks the same. It does, and I could feel her calming down. And it took a while, and I repeated myself a few times, but she appreciated it. She really appreciated it. She said, thank you. She said, thank you. I can't even tell you how many times for calming her down and for explaining that to her because she was scared. That was my mom. I mean, she might have had some brain change, but she's still my mom. And it's hard living here, and she's in Brattleboro, Vermont. And then during COVID, I couldn't have even seen her if I lived down the street from her. So it was very difficult. But that was a great thing. So with this talk, and with this, I'm throwing out a challenge to everyone in the room. My challenge is, instead of, you know, when you see somebody and something has gone wrong and you say, let me know if you need anything, just call me. Well, how many people really call somebody if they need something? I know I just do it myself. Even here, when I'm setting the rooms up, they're like, will you call me and let me know? So my challenge is for you to go home today and look at your calendar. And if you can look at your calendar in the next couple of weeks and see that you have a couple of days that you're available, I would love for you to maybe face to face or just even a phone call to somebody that you know that's a caregiver for somebody that is your friend and your neighbor that you've been doing things with, and say, you know what, Marge, I have next Tuesday available and next Thursday and the following Monday. Which of those days would work best for you so that I can come over and hang out with Jim for a while? If you want to go to the grocery store, if you want to go to the stores, whatever you need to do. Now, wouldn't that be wonderful to have a friend over in the house that knows their way around your house? They know you. That person with a little bit of brain change already knows that person. And how much peace of mind would it be for that caregiver to leave knowing our neighbor, our friend, is in the house with Jim for a little bit? And if more people did that more often, that is like your own respite care. And it's not, I mean, it's wonderful. We have tons of home care agencies. Licensed and bonded home care agencies in this area are wonderful. They do a lot for you. They can do cooking and cleaning and bring you places. But just a couple of hours to sit with somebody, it's not only going to do good for the person who's the caregiver, it's going to do good for the person who has the brain change that feels like, oh my gosh, I still have a friendship. But it's going to do a lot for you to know that you're doing a really good thing and you're going to get fulfillment out of it. Because I know for me, in those talks with my mom every day, they were for her. In the beginning, they were for her. I would, every day as I was driving home, I would go, okay, what am I going to talk about today? Maybe I'll talk about this restaurant that we used to go to. And then I would just talk about that restaurant. And I would say how we used to get there. And remember when we used to eat this there. Remember we saw this. Whatever it was for my mom so that she could remember what a wonderful woman she was, how much she has done for me, all the places that we've been to, all the accomplishments that she. But towards the end of her life, I realized those conversations were good for me because they were happy memories. Every day I was finding another happy memory to share with my mom, but I was sharing it with myself at the same time. And how wonderful is that? That's amazing. And it's only when I was sitting on the porch one day, and it's only when I looked back anyway, when I looked back, when you look forward in life, it's kind of scary because you don't know what is out there. But when you look back, that's when you realize all of the little domino pieces of your life fell into place. If you hadn't met this person, you never would have worked there, you never would have lived here, you never would have had that kid, you never would have, it's just amazing how all those things fall in place. If my mom had never left my dad, I would have never been in LA, working with the people that I worked with, meeting my husband. It's just amazing when you go back and you do that. It's incredible. So my challenge also is for people who know somebody who lives alone, who has dementia, is to maybe just reach out. Hey, I'm going grocery shopping on Saturday morning. Do you want to go grocery shopping with me? Maybe you could help them, It's just those little things. I think if we all do something like that, I think it would be a better world, better community, that's for sure. So is everybody up for the challenge? Maybe. So like I said before, instead of saying, is there anything you need? Look at your calendar, your planner. We want a pinky promise from some of these people here. I didn't really feel it in the room. So is everybody up for the challenge today? More like it. Thank you. So what I've done is Dr. Karen Sullivan went ahead, and for everybody who's willing to make a pinky promise, and by that pinky promise, you're going to sign your name on a cool thing that I've put together. So for everybody who does that little pinky promise and signs their name saying they are going to reach out, even if it's just once, we have a parting gift for you, because Karen created these conversation starter cards. She created them with the Engaged Brains Project. So basically, if you are going to go over to Bill's house or Mary's house, you could bring this little deck of cards with you. And if you don't know what to say and you're kind of afraid, you just pull out one of the cards and it's going to give you a little question. what's the most famous person you ever met or something. But I've read a couple of them. And it's a cute little deck of cards. And I think it's a great idea. And this way, what she was saying is my hope, her hope was if you pull out a card and you're with somebody with a little bit of a brain change and you read the question, then you answer it first. So then the person knows kind of what's going on, how to answer it, and then ask that person again and see what kind of reaction they get. And you never know where just one of those cards that conversation might lead to, which is wonderful. And I saw this and I thought it was adorable. It takes a village, and thank you for being part of ours. So what I did is I took those little houses, that idea of those houses and trees, and even like a little road. And so what I did is I drew a bunch of lines on a canvas, and the lines are the lines of the house, the roof, the street, the trees, and that's what I want people to sign. Everyone signs on a line. You can sign just your first name, just your last name, your whole name, however you are. The lines aren't really huge. So if everyone signs on a line, then when it's all done, I'm going to go back in and put in doors and windows and pathways and leaves. And I think it'll be really cool. And I'm hoping someday, if we have an Engaged Brains project building, which would be wonderful in Moore County, then maybe it could hang in the wall. And so, dare I say, it takes more neighbors instead of it just takes a village. And thank you for being part of ours. But I also want to say, as far as people in the room that are looking for resources and services for people with dementia and with this brain change, Alvita Person, who is in the room, wearing her little leopard print back there, she is our family caregiver advisor. She has all kinds of resources and services. She has a huge resource guide for people with whatever their needs are. She has respite care is part of her program, where she uses a grant to work with a licensed and bonded home care agency in the area to provide respite care in the home. The respite that I'm thinking of is just a friendly face, keeping people social, because you know them and they know you. But she has all kinds of information, and I said resources and all, not only for here in Moore County, but if you have a loved one that lives in a different county or even in a different state, Alvita can find whatever it is that you might need. And that's what she's wonderful for. She's a great listener. So if you just go in there and you say, look, I'm just burnt out, I don't know what to do, she's a great listener, and then she can come up with a plan for you and give you at least services and resources. But there's a lot of, one more thing I'm just going to add here is, one thing that I know, and I see it a lot, is when people struggle with placing a loved one, when it comes to the point where they need to be placed possibly in memory care, that's a very hard decision. I get that, but not everybody is meant to live forever in their home. Sometimes life happens and you're not possibly the expert or that has the expertise in caring for somebody like that. So in the case of my mom, I would have loved to have my mom live with me, but I wasn't equipped to have a lot of money to, and also know the proper care that she needed. So sometimes when someone's placed in skilled nursing or in assisted living or in secured memory care, they're going to get the care that the person has the expertise in. And a personal thing that I think, when you're around people that are in the same situation, I think it takes a little bit of the weight off. When I can only imagine if I had dementia and I'm trying to be on my toes at all time, trying not to slip, making sure that everybody knows that I am with it. If I am with people who aren't, and I can feel and sense that they have a little bit of a brain change, maybe my guard comes down a little bit and I feel a little bit more relaxed. And there's activities and there's lots of things that people can do. But the one thing that I see that happens is a family caregiver who does wind up struggling and winding up placing somebody, then what they do is they go and visit that person like every day. And so what's the difference? at that point, and the family caregiver needs time as well. So this is a weird statistic, but 70% of family caregivers wind up passing before the loved one that they're caring for. The reason is because you burn yourself out and you go straight to the ground. What they say to you in planes is, if there's a problem with the oxygen, doesn't the thing fall? What do they tell you? They don't say, put it on the small child first. They say, put it on you first, and then put it on the small child, because if you put it on the small child and you pass out, what good are you? You need to take care of yourself, and most people feel guilty when they are thinking of themselves. So they don't go to the doctor if they have an ache and a pain, because they've got to go to these doctor's appointments. They don't take their medicine because they got to make sure that you're taking your medicine. And they just keep stressing and burning themselves out. And so I ask anyone in this room who is a family caregiver or knows of somebody who is, just to reach out to Alvita. You can come and see her, make an appointment, just talk to her on the phone. Just to have a little conversation. She might shed some light that might give you some ideas that you never thought of before. And so I think that's the last slide. It is. But thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? No questions. Wow. Well, are there anybody? Is there? Yes, yes. Mm. It's true. Socialization is the key. So sitting and watching a television is entertaining. They used to call it, the boob tube when I was a kid, because you just sit in front of it and just stare. Now we have them in our hands, the television, the phones and the computers, we have them all in our hands, and kids today are just scrolling and looking, and they're not making eye contact, which is a problem. But I agree. Socialization is the key. Even if you're having a conversation with somebody and it's not where you're expecting it to go, and there's totally different words coming out than what the person means, if you look in their eyes, you know what they're saying. If you just put yourself in their shoes for just a minute and listen to them, I'm sure. There was a woman that I met who lived over at Fox Hollow who had had a stroke. She was young. Every word that came out of her mouth was totally different than what she wanted to say. And I knew it. So when I would say, hi, how are you? She might say something totally different. The weather is wonderful. She might say something totally different. But I would still talk with her, look her in the eye, and nod and know. I would give her, reaffirm what she was saying, because I knew what she was saying. So yeah, you're right. So coming to a place like this, or going anywhere and having a conversation. The person loves chocolate ice cream. Well, go out for some chocolate ice cream with the person if you know that's what they love. So I also want to let you guys know too, the table up front for the Engage Brains Project, there's lots of upcoming events. One of them is a town hall for dementia, where Dr. Karen Sullivan is going to be there. So if you have any questions or feedback, she is looking for that. What kind of issues that you've been having when you're trying to find care in this area, things like that. There is a wonderful movie in at the end of this month, the last Friday, this month and next month, at the Sunrise Theater. This month it's The King and I. Next month it's Oklahoma. And it is for family caregivers and their loved one with some brain change. Just like they have at the movie theater for Autism Day, the Sunrise Theater worked out with Colette. That was her impact project, one of hers. And it was fabulous. We did Singing in the Rain last month, and it was wonderful. So The King and I is next week. And then we have, for golfing, people who like to play golf, there's the Wee Pines. There's I forgot what day it is of the month, but there's a flyer up on that front table. Then there's a soup for a caregiver and their loved one with brain change at Community Presbyterian Church. That's in November. And then Alive Inside. Has anybody ever seen the documentary Alive Inside? It is fabulous. It's worth seeing again and again. We're going to be showing that here on September 4th. at 3 p.m. And Karen Sullivan will be here along with this wonderful Girl Scout, Kenna, who, equivalent in Boy Scouts, the Eagle Scout Award. She has decided to take it upon herself because of this movie, Alive Inside. The whole premise was to create music for the person who has some brain change. So basically, it's not just music from an era. Okay, we're just going to play 1940s music. Well, that person might like bluegrass. They don't really care about 1940s music. It has to be specific to the person, because I guarantee any one of you is like me. When I'm in the car and a song comes on the radio, and I know all of a sudden I'm transported, and I know that I'm 8 years old and what I'm wearing, and I'm sitting in the back seat of the red car, and I'm looking out the window, and I know what's passing by. That's what music does to your brain. They say in this Alive Inside documentary that what happens is, we're going to do that afterwards, okay? Would you mind just waiting? Thank you. Okay, what I was saying was, with connections in the brain. So say all of a sudden there's a little connection, and there's a connection over here, and there's a hole here. That is a brain change. A person can't figure that out. Well, in the Alive Inside documentary, they say music flows, and as it flows through, it connects where those holes are. That's why we can be transported. So if we can be transported, so can anybody. And music is vital. So this young Girl Scout is actually going to take requests and build private playlists for whoever's playlist so that they could have their own music, which is fabulous. So anyway, so that's Alive Inside, September 4th from 3 to 5. And anyway, I'm just going to stop blabbing. And I thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope the information was what you were expecting to hear. And I hope you got a little bit out of it. And I truly hope that you go out and make a neighbor's day. That would be fabulous. So thank you so much. Have a great day.